Welcome to the Biotech Startups podcast by Excedr. Join us as we speak with first-time founders, serial entrepreneurs, and experienced investors about the challenges and triumphs of running a biotech startup, from pre-seed to IPO, with your host, Jon Chee. In our last episode, Sergey shared stories from his childhood in post-Soviet Latvia, his years training in tennis, and the path that led him from a parliament internship to graduate studies in Budapest. If you missed it, check out part 1. In part 2, Sergey talks about student life in Budapest, the uncertainty of what's next, and the accelerator event that sparked his first startup, a CFD venture he launched at 22 with no experience and nothing to lose. He also walks us through his pivot into medical devices, the bank heist model of assembling teams, and how he later built in clinical data, speeding trial recruitment, selling outcomes to pharma, and helping stand up national biobanks.
How was just living in Budapest, like, compared to...
Oh, it's cool. It's extremely, like, for a student, it is extremely welcoming. It's not expensive. It's pretty cheap. It has a very distinct atmosphere to it. It's a very historical city. It's an imperial city because, Austro-Hungarian Empire back in the days. So all the palaces, all the castles, all that imperial monumental stuff is there. It is beautiful architecture-wise. We did rent for, like, honestly, for pennies. We ended up renting with the course mate of mine. We chipped together and we rented a like a post-revolution type of apartment, like this
wow.
very old apartment, which was like 300 square meters. It was absolutely massive. It had zero renovations done with it since like 1950s or something.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely massive, and no, we loved it. Honestly, I absolutely loved it. So whenever you have an opportunity to visit Budapest, summer is best, but any time of the year is best, really. You should absolutely go. Like, no second thoughts. It's a tremendous place to be.
My wife is Hungarian, so I ought to get out. I ought to get out.
You absolutely should. No, Budapest is still one of my, if not the most, the favorite European capitals, honestly.
Very cool. And while you're getting your master's, was this when you started to get like the entrepreneurial itch?
In a way, I mean, you don't call it an itch, right? It's just I started to think what next, right? I was still doing my side gig work and whatever online, but look, the society sort of pressures you to pick your paths, and a lot of folks that I went to school with, to the university with. From BA, they went to work governmental jobs, like they went to work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Economic Ministry in Latvia and whatever. And a lot of folks that I went to the university in Budapest, they went to work in consulting. They went to work with McKinsey, whatever. Or Black. Some went to BlackRock. So good positions, good companies. I was not sure what I want to do. I was not sure. So it was this situation where my mind was wandering. I do remember it actually pretty vividly. I was not. Everyone around seemed to have this very clear understanding of what they want to do with their life, and I didn't. And that was, I wouldn't say it scared me. It didn't scare me, but it did raise some uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
Because, well, everyone is so focused and so crystal clear about what they want to do with life and how they want to work in a big company and do this and do that. And I was like, I have absolutely no freaking idea.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure that I didn't want to work at McKinsey. I mean, again, no shots fired at McKinsey. right? It was not appealing for me. In a way that I was like, okay, I want to commit my life to it. So in one of the trips back to, I was second year MA, trips back to Latvia, a friend of mine actually offered me to just attend one of the events in Riga that one of the tech accelerators was putting together. It sounded like a mumbo jumbo to me back in the days, because it was like, deep tech, science-based startups, blah blah blah. And so I ended up attending this event, and I ended up meeting co-founders, and we ended up working on the same idea eventually for the first company I've co-founded. And this is how I got into thinking first about what I want to do. And what I wanted to do really is I still did not abandon my, I won't say desire is a big word, my interest in life sciences. Because look, my whole life I'm struggling with this concept of added value. Okay, so whenever you do, it should bring added value. Like what I cannot stand is uselessness.
Yeah, totally.
No, seriously, like, it's not that everything you do should have a meaning. Absolutely not. Like, you can poke around your garden if you want to. It's not the point. The point is, whenever you do something big and whenever you try to like pick a vector, make sure it's useful and make sure it's actually interesting to you. So, and I was like, well, I can't say I failed to become a doctor. I never tried to become a doctor. So I didn't necessarily fail, but I did not start.
Yeah, yeah.
So, right. So
It
I did
didn't
not even try,
manifest. Yeah.
which sometimes equals to failing. So I failed to become a doctor,
Yeah.
in all fairness. And I was like, well, these guys in the deep tech space, like in all these deep tech startups, and I was looking at the industry, and people were building companies in biotech and whatever, not in Latvia, but elsewhere. I was like, well, I mean, they're doing this, and it doesn't seem impossible, right? I didn't know anything about it. That helped, as I understand now, because whenever you don't know anything about a specific industry, well, you're kind of standing there with your pants off, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't have the boundaries that were imposed to you on you by education or whatever prior experience. So you don't have this automatic, no, it cannot be done type of situation, right? So you kind of assume everything is a blank sheet. So why not? What do I have to lose? And I did not have anything to lose, honestly, like absolutely zero. So this is where I thought, well, I might try it as a founder. I might try it as an entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it. I don't like the entrepreneur thing. Whenever people ask me about entrepreneurship, I always imagine like a person who actually sells something and buys something, and like does this clever buy cheaper here, sell more expensive there type of thing. Like, I have this very like cliche concept in my head. So I'm not an entrepreneur by any means, but yeah, I thought, well, I might become a founder. I might just, maybe there is a hack, maybe there is a pattern of how to build these companies without having an education in a specific field. Just by surrounding yourself with very much so with cellmates that were good in something, and it turned out to be, it has a lot of details to it, right? But conceptually it turned out to be true. It turned out to be true. Conceptually, I think that building a deep tech company, or building anything, pretty much like being a founder in anything, it's pretty much like, have you ever watched a bank robbery movie?
Yeah.
So it's like planning a bank robbery, right? So like for a bank, it's not that I participated in one, but I watched a lot of movies about this, and it's like putting together a crew where you need a driver, you need someone to pick locks, you need someone who knows how to shoot, and you need
Yeah.
someone who has intellectual capacity to come up with a plan, right?
Yeah, yeah,
To
yeah,
organize
yeah.
everything. Same stuff. I
Yeah.
say absolutely same thing. So it's like you just surround yourself with people that are very good at these certain like aspects that you identify for yourself as key areas in whatever industry. And chances are, I mean, the success rate is still super low, but chances are that you will actually manage to pull something off. And this is what happened with the company number one. So that was started. It was a company in the engineering space. So deep tech, not life sciences yet. Very much the first try. I was 22, and it pretty much was started. I was still in Budapest, so I was still kind of graduating. I went back to Budapest to finish my coursework and my thesis, which I was very much writing in the last day. Honestly, like I will not
You're running
even
a company.
I was actually like running a company, but like it would be too like a very glorified version of it. But
Yeah.
it was an idea of a startup that we started to kind of put together and glue together. I was a, I was a disastrous academic. I think maybe in this life maybe I could have excelled in some things, but being in academia is not one of those things. Like, and so I graduated. I graduated with a good diploma and like a good GPA and everything, but being in academia was not for me. So yeah, I finished my coursework, my thesis, and I went back to Riga, and I thought, well, had a bit of money saved up, so I thought, well, why not try the founders route?
Very cool. And what was it about the founders route that like was, I guess, resonated with you? Or did it resonate with you at that point? Or was this like, this is torture?
I was trying it out. I was trying it out. I did not have any expectations of building a business, of building a company, of being an entrepreneur is a lot of folks like to call it. I also had nothing to lose. Like literally, I had nothing. I had nothing to lose. Like what few thousand euros that I saved up, not really a huge deal, if you think about it. I didn't have any business background in my family, so my mom, my father, they're not, and they were never in business, so they were working like normal work, right? Like job. They had a job. That's what you call it. And so I had nothing to lose. It was just basically trying to learn a new skill by doing. That's it. I can't say I heard a calling or like the a voice from above or something. I just thought that I would try, and intuitively it did not feel as something alien. So I tried.
Cool.
And yeah, the first company was in engineering. It was in CFD modeling originally. So CFD stands for computational fluid dynamics. And we, my co-founders and we and technical co-founders, we were good at simulating the behavior of fluids in closed environments. CFD modeling is something that everyone uses in the aerospace industry, for example. Like NASA is using CFD to simulate, the aerodynamics of things and the air flows of things and the water or the liquid flows of something, ending up with, most probably the flow of fuel in the fuel lines of a rocket. So. And we did it for closed environments, and our application that we found was in oil and gas industry.
Cool.
We found our first customers there, and that was we did raise the first money. Interestingly enough, we only got the first check. It was a 50,000 investment, 50,000 euro investment, and we only managed to get it after we secured the first contract with an oil and gas operator to actually like trial us out. And that was really funny because in hindsight, if you think about it, that was an absolute disaster of a setup. Like that was a very, very poorly staged bank robbery, that one. It was the founder was 22.
Yeah.
no experience, and the oil and gas is the one of the most conservative industries out there. Like one of the most conservative. You literally get into the room and they're all like 50-year-old dudes that were doing this for like the last 30 years, and their grandfather was doing it as well somewhere, God knows where. And the processes of like physically getting the oil out of the ground in oil and gas did not change much in the last 100 years. It's still basic physics. I mean, we kind of, it's all sensors and simulations now, but it's still basic physics at the core of it. So like whoever entered that room needed to have some sort of reputation in the eyes of these people, and I did not have a single reputation point at all. So it was like it was a super miserable experience. But we managed to land the first contract, first trial pilot, and the first investment. And this is where we kind of started to develop there. And that company, we've worked with operators in Europe, Latin America, and Middle East. So that was kind of the first stab, really, at
Seems like a pretty good first stab.
entrepreneurship. It was the least obvious thing to do. Honestly, it was the least obvious thing to do. If you ask whatever we're talking about here, if you ask me, like, would I voluntarily repeat all that, or would I voluntarily do it if someone 15 years ago, right, when I was 18, 15, yeah, 15. Quite a time already. And I'm in the longevity field, you remember? So like it's chronological age is nothing, of course, but you still take it in mind. If someone would have told me, like, this is all the stuff you'll live through, I would have the second thoughts about about actually doing it. I wouldn't lie to you. I would not like dive right in.
You needed
So
to be
yeah,
that naive 22-year-old to jump head first.
for sure. And honestly, like the position of having really nothing to lose in a good way, right? It was not that I was living under the bridge. Like I'm not giving you that story; it would not be true, right? But it was just like an average, graduated student, and I was 22 years old, so why not? Yeah, and that was the first stab. And then the second stab was a second company that I started pretty much. I mean, almost in parallel to the first one, actually. Same setup, but I wanted desperately into life sciences. And with that company, it was the first stab at life sciences. It was in medical devices, and this is where I think we ended up being one of the first groups out there to create what is now called drug-elutive coatings or drug delivery coatings for implants, for orthopedic implants, for reconstructive surgery implants, all the titanium plates and screws that surgeons would use to reconstruct someone's face or spine or whatever that is after traumatic injuries. And we later also moved into dental implants. And our thing was most of these implants were made of alloy, titanium alloy, which is by definition bioinert, right? But it still has its own problems with biointegration. And essentially, sometimes these things are getting rejected by the body of the patient. So the answer of the industry would be to coat them with something. And mostly that something would be like a one-layer so-called hydroxyapatite coating. Hydroxyapatite is synthetic bone. It's just a powder, right? And then you have a bunch of methods like plasma spray and whatever. And what we have done was we've adopted the method that was originally not used for these type of applications. It came from the industry, and that was high frequency magnetron sputtering. And this is where we basically like vaporized it, and then we and then we made it adhere to the base to the base alloy. Instead of blasting the implant with something, we kind of deposited it. Depositing is the right word. And by doing so, we basically ended up being able to create very thin and very flexible coatings, so that they do not crack under pressure when the surgeon is physically installing an implant. Because I don't know if you imagine how a hip surgery looks, right? But what do you what do you think is the most I won't say popular, but one of the most used instruments, tools of an orthopedic surgeon?
I don't know. I can
Well,
imagine it is a
take a wild
brutal
guess.
surgery.
Yeah, so it's either the saw,
Oh,
right? So like the
yeah,
saw,
yeah.
or like a hammer with the I don't know the English word for it, but maybe in school somewhere, like you or whatever you did woodworks, right? And like whenever like you have this metal, like thin metal thing where where you take it, you stick it into the wood, and then you have the hammer, and then
Oh, like a chisel.
the chisel is the right word. Yes, the
Oh
chisel. Thank you.
man.
So like hammer, the chisel, or the saw would be like my top three of the orthopedic surgeon tools. So these coatings should be very flexible, should be durable. And for that, they should be very thin, and very adhesive to the base layer, right? So they should stick pretty much. They should not delaminate. And then we made it. We went further, and because of our method, we were able to deposit like multiple layers, like create a sandwich of these coatings. And by playing with the temperatures of how we treated these coatings after, we could have we could essentially regulate the dissolution time of those. And at some point, we also ended up being able to make them of different morphology. So some would be absolutely flat, some would be porous, etc. So and the more developed the morphology is, the easier it is for osteoblasts, for new bone to actually grow to the surface. And because of that thing being porous, we were also able to kind of impregnate it with basic drugs such as anti-inflammatory or something like that. We would basically just soak it at some point in one of our early, our early explorations and prototyping. So yeah, and that ended up being pretty efficient, with locally reducing inflammation, and as a consequence, kind of raising your biointegration success rate, right? So dropping the rejection percentage. So that was yeah, that was the second step. But what was evident by that time was that the pattern of building these companies, and just pretty much just starting something, successfully or not successfully, doesn't really matter, but the pattern of things that you need to have as input variables, and then certain manipulations that you want to achieve in the process, and certain milestones you want to show, and kind of certain things that enable you to raise money, they were pretty much translatable from industry to industry. Right. And then the other interesting thing that we observed was that you can actually learn a new skill pretty fast. So like you can get in terms, like get to terms with a new industry fairly fast. Like you really need like half a year to reach a PhD level of conversation in that specific industry, if you actually are involved in it, building something in it. Interestingly enough, so you don't necessarily need a degree to understand what's happening around you. You of course need specialists and like highly educated people around you when you're building very specific things. Like I do not pretend to be a molecular biologist, right? But in order to sustain a conversation and understand what sort of people you need around you, it's actually pretty fast. Whenever you have your butt on the line as a founder, the learning process is just tremendously fast.
I love that. And there's so many directions I want to go with that, because like I completely agree that I think sometimes, particularly in the life sciences, there's kind of an inertia to just like follow this track of like get this degree, study this thing, focus on that thing, and then at that point you unlock the opportunity to tackle this problem. And it's not to say that having highly educated, specialized people is not important. It is, but there is still value of coming in with exactly what you said, not having the hangups, and you can get up like you. I think everyone would surprise themselves how quickly you could learn if you just like apply yourself like rigorously to it. And I think too, the bank heist imagery in my head is like I was like always thinking about like Ocean's 11 or something, where it's just like, it's exactly that. You kind of just need the right people for the job. And then obviously it's important that everyone works together. And like usually that's a person that's like glue that just kind of keeps it together, and everyone working in sync.
And interestingly enough, most often it is the least specialized, so the least educated person on the topic. Like when we were talking about like vertical education, right? Not horizontal, right? So the horizontal skill set is a bit different, but in terms of like the vertical, the depth of the knowledge, that glue very often, founder, the CEO, whoever, very often is the least educated, but that's okay, right? Because because of the capacity to kind of collect these people. I'm absolutely not a fan of the drop out of school type of religion, right?
Me neither.
I think that there are cases, okay? I think that there are cases when this just comes organically as something that just like there is no other way sort of thing, right? And then it becomes a tremendous success story, and like things that they would teach you at Harvard Business School and whatever, right? And the whole like Zuckerbergs of the world type of drops out, creates a multi-billion-dollar company. But in general, I think that especially working in biotech, the value of education is tremendous. I am absolutely against this widespread, almost ideology of you don't need education or you don't need standardized education to, to achieve things or to build things. You might not need specific, or you might not find your specific degree very useful as you go along in your founder's route, right? But what you will find useful is is a skill set that a good university actually teaches you. And that skill set is research. That skill set is being able to systematize things around you. That is the skill set of trying to or being able to filter kind of the signal from the noise. Because any university would basically force you to dig through a ton of material on any topic, and then being able to digest this material and kind of distill it to some sort of sense. So all these things, you just get training in being like consecutive, really, in your work and organized. And it's not a bad thing. Like literally, it's not a bad thing. So I think this is what education gives you. So I'm absolutely against this dropout of kindergarten
Yeah.
type of thing, and
Yeah.
go build, because this is where we're heading. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, like looking at some Silicon Valley stuff that's getting published, like it's first people were encouraged to drop out of the university of grad school, right? So then it's like the very first years of your kind of BA, so undergrad, I guess that will be in US, right? And then now people are dropping out of high school, right? So
To
where do
start
we go?
companies?
To start companies. Like now it's like, whatever, go do an AI agent.
Oh,
Don't
I
spend
did
time
not
in
know
high
that.
school. Yeah,
I
yeah. So there are cases like that already. I think there are a couple of Y Combinator founders right now who are almost like high school dropouts or something. And again, um, as someone who likes statistics, right? There are always these outlier cases, which interestingly enough just reinforce the rule. And the rule is get the education,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Get the education. Don't dig yourself into into paradigms that you don't believe in.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to get yourself in like an academic cage if you don't want to, but get the best out of the school and the high school and the grad school, whatever that is. It helps. It helps to discipline yourself
Oh yeah.
as
I
you
was
go.
like, you're still, you're still forming your like worldview and like developing your critical thinking, like through like I think at least when I think back on, you know, what education has unlocked for me, at least in the business context, it's like really it's just how to think and like the discipline and just like institute a level of like it really showed you how much like hard work is necessary to get through any hard complex like topic. It's not just like you can just like breeze into it like
No,
I'm thinking about like like you roll into the parliament and like no one's doing anything like you're just like but like it sounds like your school education was like different. It's just like no, everyone is just like I know hustle culture is like whatever, but it's just like there's a hard things require a lot of work and organization and critical thinking.
they do. And the interesting part, the interesting thing that I've observed in other founders and whatever is when sometimes it seems great when someone actually like whatever launched the company, it took off straight away without any work. And I'm very happy for these cases. Again, these are edge cases, or they are the outliers. But very often it also generates um, the wrong like neural feedback loop
Yeah.
inside the brain of that founder, right? And this is where because very often actually working hard for something is more sustainable long term. Because whenever you realize that you've actually achieved something with less effort, you're like, well, got lucky, nice, let's enjoy type of thing. But I know that things might be different, and I'm prepared for the things being different potentially. Versus you just think that it's all gonna be easy, and it most probably won't be easy, right? Because it won't. But yeah, I mean, again, my whole thing, honestly, like my whole thing, whatever I did was statistically unprobable. Okay, anything, starting from the whole school, like school type of upbringing, as you called it, all the way down to even the things that we do now. Right, all of this was not evident in any sort of way. Um, Maybe that's why it's fun, and that's why it's surprising every day to a certain extent as well. But it was, yeah, it was pretty. I wouldn't say random, but sometimes unexpected for sure.
Yeah, and I was gonna say it just reminds me of your childhood of like learning by doing and just being out there.
Oh,
Like
childhood is, dude. I mean, childhood is like SEAL Team 6
yeah.
type of stuff. Like
Yeah,
watch a documentary on the 90s of like in the post-Soviet space. Like YouTube is full of that stuff.
yeah, you're just
And
like starting a
and
company is a
imagine
cakewalk. It's like this is
and imagine it's not, no. So starting a company is not a cakewalk, but dealing with all sorts of random phenotypes of people
yeah.
is something that like it's a skill that university can teach. Like, you actually need to do it.
Yeah,
And
I mean, look,
luckily enough, I got it
you're on your
at 10
bike
years old.
and you're probably meeting people of all walks of life if you're spending your time like 90% outside just like biking around.
Some of these people can try to take your bike,
Oh no.
right? No, but it's like I'm usually joking about it, but I'm not joking about it. So like you literally learn how to fight with any object that you find nearby,
Yeah.
and that is like from a stick to a stone, whatever is there. I had countless encounters of me actually like fighting my way out of something with a tennis racket, because I was going to the session, and like someone literally starts to like poke you at outside with an aim to steal your force bag or whatever. And I do remember at some point I was still very like I was small. I was like 10 years old maybe. And my absolute dream was a proper tennis bag. You know these bags which
Yep.
they wear
Yep.
when whatever you watch the US Open, or like now it's common. Back in the days, like for me, it was not common at all. So I only had my tennis rackets were always in these like simple holsters type of thing. And that's it. I wanted a tennis bag, like really bad. And I got it for my birthday when I was like 10 years old or something, and it was a Nike tennis
Hmm.
bag, and I still remember it very
Sick.
vividly. Like it was a black one with like this
Sick.
this
The
Nike
swoosh.
thing
Yeah.
that was the yeah. And I was cherishing it. Like it was huge. It was almost like the size of me. And I was the in a very dedicated way. I was like plowing my way every evening or every second evening, like to the stadium with this thing. And sometimes people, like, it was an asset.
Yeah.
Sometimes people
People
wanted
was
to
like,
take
I want it.
wanted to
Yeah.
yeah. Sometimes people wanted to take it. No joke. And then you need to make your choices. And I was very very, very adamant about not giving my Nike bag to
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah.
So I was like, I think at some point some of those guys just thought that I was mentally not okay, right? So
Yeah. And
it's
they're just
better
like, all
just
right, we're backing up.
leave me alone.
Yeah. 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 We're gonna
uh,
let Sergey just
but
go.
now it is. Look, now it's funny.
Yeah.
But I can't say it was funny back in the days, to be
Yeah.
completely honest with you. So it was pretty rough
Yeah.
sometimes. But again, we're here. I'm still alive, so
And I
it's not
think
on well.
too, that's like, it kind of like, I like the balance of like learning by doing that you have and learning via education. Because I think when you go too far in like either direction, you kind of, you just like, it's a gradient. It's not either or. It's not like drop out in kindergarten and go start a company, but it also doesn't mean like spend your whole life in school, right? It's always like there's a balance to it, and
I
it's
think
contextual.
and all the hard skills that I've ever learned were actually these translatable hard skills, such as well, stats is a hard skill, statistics is a hard skill, like any quantitative methods. It just teaches you how to look at things, at patterns, whatever. Same for the research, same for all the writing and essaying stuff we did at the university. It was not for the sake of becoming, an award-winning author or something, right? It was for the sake of being able to process information and put this information into a condensed format. Something that a lot of people will now be deprived of because they're now using ChatGPT quite a bit, right? And
Yeah,
that is the skill that a lot of people are losing because they kind of don't need it anymore. What you're skipping though is that you're also losing your brain capacity potentially,
yeah.
but whatever.
Mhm.
Um, so I was never submerged into a specific doctrine of thought. And a lot of professions that are defined, if you wish, such as a doctor, such as whatever, a nuclear physicist, or pick one, right? An engineer of some sort. They are submerged in a specific paradigm of thought, and a specific set of hypotheses, and a specific set of truths that they have, and they take for granted because like it was proven that way. So that's just the way it is. Um, and I was never subjected to that, interestingly enough, and I've thought about it, and this is why I kind of took everything as, yeah, maybe not, right? Whatever. We can try it out, sort of thing, and it helps. I see it now in biotech founders. By the way, interestingly enough, some of the founders doing like the craziest stuff out there. It's not necessarily like we would invest in them or I would invest in them as now as a fund manager. But sometimes the most like daring hypotheses, um, which sometimes lead to success, by the way, come from founders that do not have biotech backgrounds, and they were not submerged into a specific limit and borders of thought, of what is orthodox and what is unorthodox in a specific field. And that's really interesting. I think it helps to a certain degree as well. You just don't have the authorities in a way.
Absolutely. And like I think about the like there was the book I read on Robert Dugan, pharmaceutics, and I think it was like ultimately resulted in like Keytruda or something or something of that nature. No science background.
PD1.
Yeah. No science background. And again, this is not to say that like science backgrounds aren't important, but there's a kind of an element of like I like that, just like maybe not like kind of like being able to like look at these kind of problem sets with kind of an open-mindedness.
Unconventionally, indeed. Then again, I mean, science backgrounds are extremely important.
For sure.
Whoever is watching, please go and get your science background. It's very important that you get one, so we can advance the industry. Actually, like we have enough visionaries in here.
Yeah,
we actually need people that know how to do things now.
Exactly, and I totally agree. I think, but it just comes back to having the ideal optimal bank heist team. Like everyone's got to play their part.
True.
Your first stab at your first company, suboptimal. Sounds like just like maybe wasn't Ocean's 11 like status.
Yeah, more Ocean's 3.
Yeah, Ocean's 3, exactly. And so
second one was a bit better. Second one was a bit better. But then again, but it kind of showed that, coming back to that one, it kind of showed that it was possible, or it was possible to get into the other segment. And then I spent another 3 years or so, maybe. I didn't start anything. I actually joined other companies in the space, finally in the space where I wanted to end up, which was age-related diseases. So essentially usual suspects, right? Everything that kills us with age: cancer, neurodegenerative, cardiovascular. And because I had a lot of this experience of building an early stage and going through preclinical into clinical with medical devices, but still, I had quite a lot of understanding in regulatory and everything, and intellectual property protection. I actually started to teach at that point somewhere, so I actually started to teach here at the school in Riga Graduate School of Law. I started to teach intellectual property,
cool,
and venture capital, like how knowledge-based capital, how kind of intellectual property actually forms the core of deep tech companies, and how this is the major asset, interestingly enough. So so I spent like 3 years essentially helping others to package themselves, going from preclinical to clinical. So I helped them raise money, and these were not Latvian companies; these were UK and US mostly. But how to package them in terms of IP, how to essentially communicate with the regulator, and how to just build up the case, going from preclinical, so animal models, into the IND approval, into the human phase of clinical trials. And that helped quite a lot as well. And then the third company came, which is which was already in the pharma space.
Talk about that. Can you talk about that?
I can to a certain extent. So I met with I was introduced actually randomly by a common friend of ours I met with Gary, who is now my partner in the fund, and a bunch of other stuff was built. So we met in 2018, I think. 2018, give or take. And we started, two of us and our third co-founder, who is now the CEO of the company, actually. So the company is not sold; it's pretty successfully operating. We started a company in the clinical data space. So we hypothesized that what you can do is, well, the industry was facing still facing a fundamental problem. Taking a drug to market takes like 10 years. All right. A lot of this 2 years is the candidate development, drug candidate development, and then it's your preclinical work, and then the last 6 years it can be essentially clinical trial work, right? So phase 1 to phase 3, and clinical work can be sped up significantly, very significantly, if you streamline patient recruitment, because patient recruitment is still a very manual thing that CROs, clinical research organizations do. And they do it on behalf of study sponsors, aka pharma companies, so the ones that are paying for the studies. In most of the legislations, pharma companies are not allowed to directly contact patients. So clinical research organizations are basically the contractors that are doing all the clinical trial work on behalf of a pharma company. You hire a CRO and they develop a protocol, they do recruiting, they do all the dosing, they do pretty much everything, like a turnkey solution type of thing. And they're very manual because CROs basically rely on their relationships with doctors or patient organizations or specific hospitals. And these networks of influence of CROs are very regional very often. So like a CRO working in Sweden will have connections in Sweden. It will not have connections in Hungary or Romania or wherever, far from Sweden. So, and the whole thing is very manual. These guys are getting paid per patient enrolled, and then they're charging a bunch of other services to pharma. They're very comfortable. They're not really interested in doing it faster. With pharma, though, every single day you cut from the clinical trial process and like this 10-year cycle is a tremendous amount of unrealized revenue that can be realized. Right? Because the patent cycle is normally 20 years. And then you patent a compound in the very beginning. So like when you have a drug candidate, so you patent something and then you spend another 10 years testing it with a very low probability of success. You spend horrendous amount of money, hundreds of millions sometimes, during these 10 years. And have the approval at the end of the day. And then you have 10 years, if everything went smooth, to recoup for all the losses that you've generated in the first period, plus earn something on top, right? So it's a big bet. It's like a very long-term bet, and it's a big bet. And this is why, by the way, whenever people talk about pharma companies, they often don't realize that they think in like 20, 30-year increments. Like strategic thinking of a big pharma company is like 20 years ahead. It's not like next year or not even 5 years. It's somewhere there. Because the drugs that are now in the pipeline, in the testing pipeline, are the ones that are meant to generate revenue through 2035 or something like that. So anyway, and we thought, well, there is a ton of data laying around hospitals, right? And all the, well, I mean, you call them patient custodian institutions, but mostly hospitals. It is usually not allowed to get the data out physically, because in EU it's considered to be a breach of GDPR. In US, HIPAA is, which is the US legislative framework, HIPAA, it is more flexible, so it's not that harsh as in EU, but still, like you cannot just throw patient data around.
Yeah.
Now, so we thought, well, why can't you extract metadata from these hospitals, from these institutions, anonymized metadata? So why can't you extract like a snapshot with just essentially pointer variables to what sort of patients are there in that specific institution? I might make a not very successful example. I don't mean it to sound like intimidating to patients or anything, but it's like a warehouse inventory type of thing, where you are not physically in the warehouse, but you know, like that there are this many boxes of that type somewhere, in whatever, Wyoming somewhere, sitting, right? So it's the same thing. And you don't physically move the boxes out. You just know that they're there. And this is what we did. So this is how we approached things. And we created this first tool, which we call the Curator. The company's called Lungesys, so Lungesys Curator. It was basically like a search engine Let's streamline the identification of potential trial candidates for pharma. So we were able to say, well, potentially, for example, 10 people with diabetes that would match the criteria for enrollment for your trial are in this hospital right there, right? And that created quite a big of a difference, because, not geographically bound to a specific location, cheap and super fast. Right. So we went as far as, with some of the pharma partners, which is sat down on a Zoom call, like live screen demonstration. We were like, well, let's pick a trial that you are doing, and they would pick a trial, and we're like, off you go. This is a potential cohort. Like we actually, it's not that we guarantee that these people are still there and that they are 100% enrollable, but according to these very base input variables and input criteria, they might be eligible. And if you consider, even a 30% enrollment success rate out of that cohort right there, you're halfway done with your enrollment, right? Which would normally take you like 2 years, and like it's years. And the rarer the disease, the more difficult it is to find the patients. But then the more severe the disease, the higher the cadence of the disease, so like cancer, for example, or very aggressive forms of cancer, the harder it is to find the patients and form the trial cohort, because A, the patients are sometimes rare, and B, they progress from stage to stage very fast. So if you're recruiting for someone in glioblastoma, for example, the brain cancer, which can basically kill a patient in 6 months, that's challenging to even test something on someone, right? And enroll someone in a trial. So we did this, turned out pretty successful, and then we moved down the ladder even more. We introduced one of the first electronic consent management solutions, fully digital, for patient consent, as well as a bunch of tools for real-world data collection. We call them Lungesys Engage. Essentially everything that you want to collect in terms of feedback from the patients, that big pharma companies started to use, and everything, starting from clinical trials, ending up with market access studies. And the market access studies, when, let's say, AstraZeneca says, well, I want to introduce the new type of ibuprofen in California, and I have absolutely no clue whether people will buy it or not, right? And it's everything. It's like the shape of the pill, the size of the pill, the color of the pill, like the shape of the blister, is it whatever. So you need to collect a lot of this consumer data, which you have, and big pharma company has zero clue of how to do it.
Yeah.
Like zero clue. But it's valuable, right? Because it's make it or break it in terms of sales very often. So real world data collection tools are also used for that, and we had big pharma using it all over, from clinical trials to that kind of market penetration type of stuff. And then we progressed even further, and we ended up partnering with a bunch of governments on building national programs in either preventive care, such as, for example, breast cancer prevention in Europe, or national genome programs, so building out national biobanks, one of which we helped to build in the Middle East for one of the Middle Eastern governments as well. We pretty much helped build the infrastructure for the largest biobank in the world as of now.
Whoa.
When it comes to the sample size. So that was the third company, and it was that already was a very, I wouldn't say calculated, but like a very consistent move into the pharma space, a very consistent work on what this pharma space, of the niche in that specific pharma space, and on the specific inefficiency that you can work on to actually speed up things and generate this value at scale. So I think that was a much more calculated effort versus the previous ones.
Very cool. And I was gonna say what a demo. You're just like, put up a Zoom call. You're just like, tell us the trial, and then you just like
in a way, in a way. The interesting thing is, there is a tremendous understanding gap which is explainable. It's not that it's bad or something, or or someone is smart or someone is not smart. It's just there is a tremendous understanding gap between the general public and the perception and the way that the perception of general public of how the big pharma industry works, and the actual way of how pharma industry works. Like these are two very different pictures right there. And general public very often seems to demonize the big pharma industry. Sometimes, of course, big pharma industry gives the public kind of the hints to demonize it, right? But eventually, general public does have very little understanding of how big pharma works and why the things happen in the way they happen and why drugs cost the way they cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, it was the interesting part about this demo that you mentioned is that one of the things that general public thinks is that big pharma is like this all-knowing, all-anticipating, super smart type of establishment, right? Which kind of is on the edge of pretty much anything. Like all the cutting-edge stuff is and that's not true, right? So if you take cancer drugs, for example, then I think 14% of first in class cancer drugs are actually internally developed by pharma. 14%. All else is acquired from small biotechs. So pharma basically feeds on the IP of others. It's very slow to move in its own R&D. It doesn't even pretend that it can, right? So it's good at distribution and sales and fueling the R&D at the very last stages, but it's like very bad at innovation. And in the very same way, big pharma, you can always sell to big pharma if you offer them ready-made solutions. And it is a huge misconception that you can like approach a big pharma company with, this very fancy AI for drug discovery platform of yours and say, I'll sell you subscription to it. Or in our case, I'll sell you subscription to our tool, go poke around, go search for patients. No one gives a damn. Like no one really cares. Well, the only way to sell to big pharma is come over and provide like a full problem description or a full problem blurb, and then show how you're gonna spectacularly make this problem disappear. It's like, we know that you have this trial that is failing to recruit for 2 years already. This is the solution. Like, there you go. Like, sign with us, we make it happen. That's
you have
it.
to make
like,
it a
turnkey.
layup.
Yeah. Same with assets. Same with AI for drug discovery, for example. Like, we actually have a molecule that we've designed. This is the data. Like, we have an asset. Let's partner on the asset. And this is the question. This is the language that big pharma understands. It does not understand the. Here's the platform, go play around with it. So it doesn't really buy the capabilities, it buys the output of things and the results of these capabilities. So this is how we approached it, really. It was fun.
That's all for this episode of the Biotech Startups podcast featuring Sergey Jakimov. Join us next time for part 3 of our series, where Sergey shares how he moved from founder to investor, co-launching a longevity fund built on access to top university spin-outs and a highly experienced scientific advisory board, and why he takes a pragmatic, disease-by-disease approach to aging. He'll also dig into selling to big pharma, what patient outcomes first investing means in practice, and how the traction from his first fund set up the second, a pet health-focused fund. If you enjoy the show, subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. The Biotech Startups podcast is produced by Excedr. Don't want to miss an episode? Search for the Biotech Startups podcast wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. Excedr provides research labs with equipment leases on founder-friendly terms
to support paths to exceptional outcomes. To learn more, visit our website www.excedr.com. On behalf of the team here at Excedr, thanks for listening. The Biotech Startups podcast provides general insights into the life science sector through the experiences of its guests. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast is at the user's own risk. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not the views of Excedr or sponsors. No reference to any product, service, or company in the podcast is an endorsement by Excedr or its guests.